I realize that it most deeply comes from my experience, certainly with my own work and counseling many people, of seeing how much people unnecessarily suffer in life. And I think anybody who's after anything in life, but especially a life of meaning, a life of purpose, there's a certain amount of inevitable and necessary suffering. Whether you want to have good relations with other people, just an inner sense of well-being for yourself, which means you have to conquer your bad habits and work through your demons. Whether you want to find success in work and understand what it means to work for others or own your own business or work in any setting where you're dealing with other people, the public. Even in our pastimes, people look for things to give them some kind of inner satisfaction, inner nourishment, recreation. There are better and worse ways to do that. I think those who want to understand what the world is and how it works, there are better and worse ways to go about that, especially being open-minded, non-dogmatic, and truly coming at things with a sense of curiosity. I think the spiritual search, again, the investigation within, what you're like, what you're made of, there's a way to do that can bring us great satisfaction. And I think I've seen people get really stuck in choosing a path where they don't grow, but rather they seem to maybe even regress because they're doing a kind of spiritual work that actually does not help them go forward in their work. There are ways to be religious that I think are more and less productive. I think even in the mystical world, which was my focus last week, there are better and worse ways to engage in that behavior. Most of my work is in interpersonal relationships, meaning people who are not wise in marriage, lifelong relationship, not wise with children or parents, and I think next in the way people conduct their own inner lives. People are oftentimes racked with depression, self-doubt, times of self-loathing. People don't grieve well or productively. People have episodes of despair. People get really, really unhappy within, and they don't know the way out. Been sharing oftentimes that I have the great honor and privilege of working at a recovery house. I lead a group every Friday morning with young men who are addicts in many different ways. And the palpable unhappiness of, number one, having been in the world of substance abuse, trying to get out, and the inner torment and suffering that is just a part of their lives, and realizing that their addictive behavior destroys relationships, destroys trust of other people, and to have the idea that there is a way out in the world of recovery, and what I bring to it is the idea of wisdom and recovery. So I think the world of recovery is becoming sharper and more insightful all the time. And I think this is something that, as a person who specializes in spiritual psychology and pragmatic and insight wisdom, is a very important part of that. So I realize as I'm talking to you about this, it is my summation of more than 30 years counseling people that most people suffer, most, not all, most people suffer in their inner lives because of lack of wisdom. If they were more wise, they would suffer less. Now, wisdom won't cure, wisdom's not a panacea, but it definitely will make the journey toward a life of meaning, especially the meaning in nourishing interpersonal relationships and the meaning of a well-ordered, productive inner life. Those will go better. So I think when I think about a person searching for meaning in life, what I'm going to call the frame upon which any spiritual search is engaged, whether it's professional, spiritual, or any other kind of a search, the frame is a well-ordered inner life and nourishing relationships with other people. If you don't have that, whatever you do is not going to feel good enough. If you do have that, whatever you do is going to be that much more satisfying. So there are many, many aspects of wisdom. I realize that I focus mostly on inner well-being, osher in Hebrew, Eudaemonia in Greek, and the wisdom of interpersonal relationships. So I realize that when I teach wisdom, there's a few words that I have to define, a few words that I've taught for many years, but I think I have to bring in at the beginning. First of all, what do we mean by inner well-being? The Hebrew word again is osher, and like any of these words that are root words, like wisdom, like well-being, there's no definition that you can find that's going to satisfy. In fact, one of the problems I have in researching this area is you can get to the academic level and you look at authentic happiness, inner well-being, and so forth. They're pretty synonymous. There's the 48 qualities of authentic happiness. Pages and pages and pages of what wisdom is. To the point that I think for the person who's actually trying to acquire wisdom, the person trying to acquire Osher, authentic happiness, the academic world is just too vast and too complicated. Because people are trying to come up with a complete theory, which is, I think, a peculiar obsession of academics, is that no one would ever find fault with anything they've done, right? So there's more and more theory and more words so that no one can come and say, yeah, but you forgot this one. So in working with spiritual psychology, with the work of wisdom in our lives, I'm not aiming for any kind of total theory, any kind of all-inclusive definition. What I'm looking for is to share with you a few thoughts that I think your inner life will fill out. So,
Sim, shalom, sim, shalom, sim, shalom, tova uveracha. Sim, shalom, sim, shalom, sim, shalom, tova uveracha. Ay, 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 ay. Ay, 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 ay. Sim, shalom, sim,